Welcome to the Daily Beast podcast. I'm Joanna, Chief Content Officer of the Daily Beast.
And I am Samantha B., Chief Content Officer of Steve Bannon's re-entry into civil society. Seems like everything's going just great.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
It's Thursday, which means you're invited to the best dinner party of the week, hosted by me and Sam, where we plunder the Daily Beast newsroom and we talk about the people and the stories we are interested in this week. So on today's pod, it's go time for the election, and we're talking to the beast of the week, the journalist and Trump insider, the man who first exposed the breathtaking levels of dysfunction in the Trump administration in his extraordinary bestseller, Fire and Fury, the author and journalist and my great friend, Michael Wolff. And a bit later, we're going to be joined for an uplifting conversation, I hope, with New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, who I know has been crisscrossing the country in the last-ditch efforts to support Kamala Harris.
I love uplifting conversations.
And in the download, Beast's special correspondent Harry Lambert is back by popular demand to give us the latest on Steve Bannon. And Sam, all your work.
Thank you.
And explain what's going on at the Washington Post now that they've shed over 250,000 subscribers and counting.
And everyone, of course, is giving their final pitches this week. Donald Trump gave us his powerful last sell at Madison Square Garden in New York City. Unforgettable. Kamala delivered her closing remarks at a speech in D.C. at the Ellipse. And now you and I, perhaps most importantly, giving our last looks as well. How are you feeling? How are you doing?
I find that I can't concentrate on anything. 2 people have called me to ask to go to the theatre. And I was like, how could I possibly sit in a theatre, in a darkened room, and watch whatever actors are doing? Because there's nothing more interesting than what's happening right now.
Yes. What are your election night plans?
Well, my election night, I'm going to be in the office. The newsroom will be on full alert. All of us are gathering. And who knows when we're going to get a result. It could be super quick. It could take weeks.
That's quite a pizza party.
A lot of carbs will be consumed.
Many carbs
Next
will
time
be.
you see me, I may be twice the size.
Maybe I'm going to come to your pizza party.
Well, you're very welcome.
Oh, thank you. I don't want to just pace my apartment. You know, like an animal, like a caged animal.
Yeah, what are you going to do? How much alcohol will be consumed?
Well, it's. I have friends who are coming in from out of town, so I was going to spend a little time with them.
Especially to help you through a difficult day.
I think it's an accident that they're here, but I'm embracing keeping busy, and I'm going to go to the dentist because that feels very on brand for an election day. I've already voted, so I've taken care of that, and then we'll see how it goes. I'm sure I'll be scratching. I'll be hovering outside the glass walls of the Daily Beast, and then you have to invite me in like a vampire.
Well, I'm ordering extra pizza for you because I know you're going to need it.
I'm going to need it.
Let's get into what we're obsessed with this week.
Oh boy, we have not talked about this yet. I'm totally obsessed with Rudy Giuliani's list of items that he needs to turn over to the 2 election workers, Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss in Georgia, that he defamed. Number 1, his penthouse apartment in Manhattan.
And I have a friend who lives in his building.
What?
It is a spectacular building on the corner of Madison in the 60s. And what an apartment to have to give up.
Oh boy, that's gonna hurt. His a 1980 Mercedes, formerly owned by Lauren Bacall, a shirt and picture signed by sports people Joe DiMaggio and Reggie Jackson, a diamond ring, costume jewelry, and 26 luxury watches.
This is so humiliating for him.
So humiliating, especially since I think he personally has defined himself as just a New York stalwart, regardless of all of the things that have happened, and so much has happened. This has got to be a very consequential. This is quite embarrassing.
Well, and it's just such an extraordinary journey. I remember when I moved here for The Guardian, Rudy Giuliani was in his 2nd term, and he was everywhere. He was at the filling of a pothole. He was an extraordinary figure. And it didn't have to end this way for him. And it's tragic, the route that he's gone on.
He went on the worst possible route, and now he is debased and decrepit, and his hair dye melts on national TV. And here we are. That's what happens when you tie your fortunes to Donald Trump.
Could you just do that again? That could be a sort of line from a new musical.
That's what happens when you tie your fortunes to Donald Trump.
I think that's the refrain of the opening number of your musical.
I can't believe that more people have not learned that lesson. It is just so observable. Now, okay, obviously I'm obsessed also with the election, but it's the worst kind of obsession that makes me want to tear out all my hair. But aside from that, I'm into the new Lincoln Project ad that just came out.
Oh, which one? Go on.
Okay, the one that shows us that women can vote for Kamala and their husbands never need to know. I can't believe we have to tell people that their votes are secret. But I am so desperate to believe that the secret lives of voting wives are real. Oh, let it be real.
I can't believe we have to remind women that they can vote differently to their husbands.
Yes, but we do have to remind them that they can vote differently. I think we actually have to remind everyone that you can vote differently from how your whole community sees you.
Yeah, or how your friends vote.
You can definitely have a Trump sign in your lawn if you want to fit in with all your neighbors, but you don't actually have to do it once you get into the voting booth. Nobody has to know. And then you can walk out and go, yay, MAGA, I did it. And you can have voted for Kamala Harris, and no one is ever going to find out.
Deep fake voting.
Deep fake voting. Vote with your heart. Vote with your conscience. Don't just do what your neighbors tell you to do.
Well, and vote for women to have health care.
Oh, yeah.
That would be nice.
That would be nice. Thanks.
Good to have you back, Harry. Let's start with Steve Bannon. Bannon is best known for being Trump's chief strategist and senior counselor. Bannon's just spent 4 months in jail for his involvement in January the 6th. He's now out. He got released at 3:15 a.m. on, I guess, Tuesday morning. And Harry, you just saw him. Tell us everything.
So we were it's someone called it Park Avenue populism, because we were high up above Park Avenue in the Regency Hotel, about 12 hours after he was released from prison, in a small packed room of journalists and cameras and TVs rolling. And Bannon walks in his customary Barber double shirt, sort of flowing hair, seemingly picked up a tan in prison, not quite sure how that happened.
Do we think it was a fake tan? I did notice his tan and I thought, oh, he's caught a touch of the Trumps.
It's all part of his scheme to get back in with Trump, right? Look more and more like him. I mean,
Just a little foundation, just a little base. You're going on camera. Everybody's got
Exactly right. You're going on camera.
Yeah.
TV makeup.
Yeah, tan, good hair, a consistent uniform. This is the Trump playbook, right? So Bannon's got it down too. The thing that's strange about listening to him is he seems reasonable. He's actually got quite a good voice, and so you speak to him, and he even addresses you. Doesn't treat the press with hostility. In fact, he's very glad that the elite press are there. When New York Magazine and the Wall Street Journal asked him a question, he made a point of repeating that the question was from them. Mm-hmm. And there were other points in the press conference where sort of strange networks no one had ever heard of, supposedly from the heartland or from Bannon's populist wing of the Republican Party, would ask him a question, mm-hmm. and he seemingly was very uncomfortable and quite keen to get back to the elite media. He's just a member of the counter-elite. He's not in any way actually interested in his base, if you like.
Mm-hmm. Well, that seems a fairly consistent story with all the big MAGA politicians. He's a character, right? And
Mm-hmm.
he wants the big media corporations to validate him.
Completely. And I think, the disjointed experience of listening to him is, as I say, seems reasonable, but you got to remember, this was a guy who called in 2021 for the beheading of Anthony Fauci and Christopher Wray, the FBI director. And he wanted their heads on pikes as a warning to bureaucrats everywhere.
And Anthony Fauci, of course, was the head of the CDC who was leading the COVID response.
Right, exactly. And so, he said at one point in the press conference, he said, who's calling for political violence? I am a political prisoner.
Oh,
but you got to remember that his past here, a past that got him banned from Twitter. He's also been banned from YouTube. So in many ways, he's beyond the pale. And he's even sort of beyond the pale to the Trump campaign. Because if you don't remember, he fell out famously with Trump, mm-hmm. having been his chief strategist, after calling his son treasonous for his dealings with Russia over the election.
Worming himself back in there, though.
But he's trying.
Trying. How do you think that's going?
Well, and also just remind us, why did he go to jail? It was for contempt, wasn't it?
The Jan 6 committee, the Congressional Jan 6 committee, wanted him to come before them and speak. At the time, Trump completely opposed the committee, didn't want any of his acolytes or wannabe acolytes like Bannon to go before the committee. And so Bannon sort of took the order from the boss, didn't go before the committee, made a big show of not going before the committee. Trump then started to see that it would be much better to have someone providing counterfire on the committee. By then, it was too late for Bannon. He was already he was on the process of getting sent to jail. And when he finally turned around and said, I am ready to testify before Jan 6, it was too late. He's recast this entire experience as, I served on a Navy destroyer in my 20s, as he put it yesterday, and I went to prison for my country in my 70s. But in reality, he ended up in jail when he never wanted to go there, purely in order to serve Trump.
Right. I mean, he's already broadcast. He's already done a full broadcast on his channel. Yes, calling for political chaos, essentially. I mean, he's a nihilist. Right?
Well,
Just
one
wants
thing
to
he
blow
also
up the whole system.
Completely, but one thing he also called for is he called for Trump to take to the airwaves on election night.
Yes.
At 11 p.m.
Yes.
He said, don't wait until the middle of the night. He called for him to explain, quote unquote, the election to the American people.
Yes.
In other words, he wants Trump to seize control of the fact that initial voting returns are going to be more Republican than Democrat.
I remember it very well that his advice was to just call it for Trump early, so that, just to sow chaos. I mean, he is an agent of chaos, for sure.
So there's two outcomes to this election. Trump either wins or Trump says he's won.
Exactly. Either we've won. Jimmy Kimmel had it good last night. He said they're saying that either we've won or it was stolen.
So he spent 4 months in prison, further radicalizing himself and others. I guess we'll see what happens in the next how many days? I don't even know how many. It feels like.
The one other thing I thought was interesting about Bannon is this was a guy who hated Elon Musk 18 months ago. He said he called Elon Musk a war profiteer for his dealings with the Chinese Communist Party. He said he's not only not an American nationalist, he's not an American. And he said he's someone who would take a check from Adolf Hitler himself. So he couldn't have been more forthright about it. Yesterday, when I asked him about this, I said, do you stand by those comments? He kissed the ring. He said, while I disagree with Elon on China, I think he's a great American who's put money in the right places, and he's had a great awakening. He's now part of the MAGA movement. I think the reality is here, he's been completely displaced, not just by the people running Trump's campaign, who we've reported on getting paid vast sums of money, but by Musk himself, who owns a platform on which Bannon is not even a presence anymore. So this was a sort of old gangland kingpin coming out of jail and realizing that the gang's been remade without him, and the richest man in the world is now atop it. That's the way I'd put it.
And normally you would think Trump could have actually sent a plane for him. I mean, he could have greeted him. He could have sent one of his sons to greet him. But in fact, he comes out on his own. He has to hold his own press conference. Meanwhile, Trump is dancing around with Elon.
Yeah, I'm a 76ers fan, right? And when Meek Mill was released from prison a couple of years ago, he was taken straight to courtside that night. Bannon could have been taken straight to Allentown, Pennsylvania, theoretically the kind of place that would welcome him. But he said, I have no plans to be part of any Trump rally. And I think that just shows that, this is a man on the outside.
So sell shares in Steve Bannon.
But he's been, spending all this time continuing to animate his base of fans and acolytes, which is a very dangerous place for us to be.
I predict that most MAGA voters will be in bed by 11 o'clock on election night. And if Trump makes one of his tedious, long, rambling weaves, they will have missed it because they'll all be asleep.
From your lips to God's ears.
All right, so now
Joanna.
we're going to talk about another rich man, another billionaire. The Beast just published an excellent column from Paul Farhi, the former media correspondent for The Washington Post. And for anyone needing a catch-up, The Washington Post, which is owned by the world's third wealthiest person, Jeff Bezos, has decided not to run an endorsement of Kamala Harris that the opinion pages had already written and had ready to go. The paper has been endorsing presidential candidates since 1988, but Will Lewis, the troubled CEO there, was sent out to explain to his newsroom that Bezos claims it makes readers think the media looks biased. And apparently he was partying with Katy Perry in Europe when the paper was in crisis over the weekend. What an embarrassing debacle. And as Eric Wimple wrote in the Washington Post, everyone would have forgotten if they'd endorsed Kamala, but no one will forget Bezos and Lewis pulling the endorsement. Harry, again, tell us everything.
So this is a paper that lost $77 million last year, as its CEO, Will Lewis, told the newsroom a few months ago in trying to justify his plans to shake up the newsroom. By losing 10% of their subscription base, they've probably lost anywhere between 10 and 30 million overnight, essentially.
Dollars.
Yeah.
They've lost $250,000 readers, but they've lost between 10 and $30 million.
I mean, that's enough to wipe out most media businesses on their own, right? So it's extraordinary they can even survive that. But this is, I think, just it's catastrophic. They had proudly touted the fact that they'd gained 4,000 net subscribers this summer after all their work, and they've just lost 250,000. And also, we act like that's the final number. I mean, it's just going to keep wearing away, right? So there's sort of an untold crisis, and also any attempt to remake the newsroom, which was the whole point of Bezos hiring this outsider with a cloudy past, shall we say, in Will Lewis, any attempt to remake the newsroom is now going to become even less tenable than it felt in the summer.
Right. What do you think is the connection to Blue Origin? Because people are talking about how his space ambitions are they're on a very shaky foundation. He had a meeting with Trump. It feels very connected to me. It feels very connected to business decisions that he's making and taking a position of cowardice in order to continue his successful business.
So Blue Origin is this company which for 20 years has been being, we're going to talk about him again, eclipsed by Elon Musk. So just like Bannon is getting eclipsed by Elon Musk in Trump world, Bezos has been being completely eclipsed by Elon on the space front.
Eclipser in chief, Elon Musk. I like it.
Blue Origin is actually 2 years older than SpaceX. There's a famous picture of Musk and Bezos meeting for lunch when they both still look like geeks before their complete physical transformation.
Sure.
And in that time, Elon has gone on to build a space company that leads in sort of every domain. Whereas Blue Origin, having begun as a pet project, has in the last 6-7 years scaled up to the same size as SpaceX, but done nothing of any real effect. And on the same day that the endorsement or non-endorsement happened, the CEO of Blue Origin and the head of government relations met with Trump after a press conference. Bezos refers to this in the op-ed he then put out. So to catch you up, after the hemorrhaging of all these subscribers, Bezos puts out a defense of the non-endorsement, and he refers to this. He says, there's no basis for thinking this has anything to do with Blue Origin, and I sighed when I saw the news that they'd met on the same day as Trump. It's all very well for him to say that, but the reality is we know he stepped down from Amazon, day-to-day control of Amazon, to focus on Blue Origin. And in a comparison between focusing on the Washington Post or focusing on his space company, he's going to do what's best for the space company.
I feel like Blue Origin is the party rocket, right? Musk is actually going to rescue the people that NASA can't bring back from space, right? But actually, Blue Origin, you just think of Jeff and Lauren Sanchez, his fiancée, as taking their friends up for 11 minutes in space. I think they go up to the Kármán line and then they come back down again, right? And then he comes off with his cowboy hat and struts around with his lifts. And it doesn't feel serious.
It's suborbital flight, right?
Suborbital.
Same with Branson.
Yeah, it's party rocket.
Yeah, exactly.
It's to show off to your friends.
Oh, it's suborbital.
Yeah. It's the status games, right? It's just back to that, and Elon's eclipsing him in that regard.
But to be fair to Jeff Bezos, he has been an excellent proprietor up until now, right? He doesn't interfere. I mean, there's been plenty of critical reporting of both Donald Trump and of Amazon in the Washington Post, which we're led to believe he hasn't remotely interfered with. So what is this actually about?
Well, I think he's misunderstood his role. There's a great moment in the Tina Brown Diaries where she talks about Cy Newhouse, the owner of Condé Nast at the time, saying to her, I have no power. And Tina says, what do you mean you have no power? You control all the magazines. And he says, I couldn't tell any of you what to do, because if I did, you'd tell me to get lost. And I think this is really a story about the Post's leadership, namely Will Lewis and the rest of them at the top of the paper, not having the power to say to Bezos, not having the standing to say to Bezos, you can't do this.
Right. It feels that a lot of businesses are preparing for a Trump presidency now and being very protective of their businesses, and in a way that is just so disheartening to me. And, if if due to his businesses he's not interested in doing journalism in the public interest, I feel that he should get rid of it. I think that he should cut it loose.
Well, why did he buy it in the first place?
Yeah, why?
Well, I think he bought it to... I think he bought it because it was on sale, actually. Don Graham, his great friend, wanted to sell it to him, and he bought it for $250,000. But the extraordinary thing to me is he came up with the branding statement, which is very portentous, democracy dies in darkness. Right. But to then pull the endorsement when it's already been written, suggests there was no one looking out for Bezos, which is usually when executives are vulnerable, when they haven't protected their boss from, in fact, exactly what's happened, which is humiliation and then a 10% readership drop when, as you say, they've just spent the summer adding 4,000 subscribers, which they were cheering from the rooftops about.
And that was the exact wrong time to take a position of total neutrality. And I think that watching all of these tech leaders abase themselves before Trump, expecting him to win the presidency is so deeply upsetting to me, because we know that Donald, it doesn't matter what anyone does. It doesn't matter how much people abase themselves before him. Being obsequious before him means nothing. He has no loyalty. He has the attention span of a goldfish. None of it's going to mean anything in the end anyway.
Right.
So it's a completely impotent gesture. And I do use the word impotent with full intent.
We can just spell out the quid pro quo, though, if you like, which obviously Bezos vehemently denies, which is that, why has he used the post to advance Blue Origin? It's because he lost out on a major cloud computing deal under the Trump administration, which he later sued Trump over. So I think the fear here is that Elon, being Trump's new best friend, will benefit on the space front, and that he needs to become a sort of neutral friend to Trump at least. So that's why he's done this. And then just with the post, I think the most amazing stat to me is to understand how relevant it is to him. Imagine Bezos's worth is $100,000. He spent, as a comparison, for that $100,000, $130 on the post. So if you have $100,000 in your bank and you spend $130 on something, you're not going to think about it. You're not going to care about it.
But he does care about his reputation, and this is a ding to his reputation, right?
Massively.
And also to be partying with Katy Perry. I love Katy Perry, no diss on her. But while this is going on, makes him look essentially unserious, yet he is an exceptionally serious businessman. We know that, right? We know his girlfriend, Lauren Sanchez, or fiancée, I don't know why they're not yet married, but is a great friend of Ivanka Trump's. So this just feels bad for the Post, and it feels bad for Bezos. And what I find odd is that no one within the company, and he's got, as we know, a myriad of advisors, saw this coming. This was utterly predictable. They've endorsed for the last 30 years. And in fact, they endorsed Hillary Clinton in 2016, and with a teardown of Donald Trump. So this idea that somehow now we've decided to be neutral makes zero sense.
Oh, it makes no sense at all. Now is the time that you plant a flag. I know that it doesn't move voters, but now is the exact time that you plant a flag. You know, every good executive needs one person in their world who will say no to them, and that's what we are truly lacking right now.
I'm sure he's looking to sell the Post. He must be looking to unload the Post.
That was the other amazing thing about Bezos' op-ed. He basically just called out all the journalists. He was like, trust in you is at an all-time low. It's like, wow, brother, is this really how you're going to get your way out of this one?
Okay, well, Harry, I don't know what you're going to come back with next week, but we're looking forward to it. I hope you come back with...
Well, I hope we have good news next week. I hope there is news next week.
There may not be any news
next week.
There may not be. So we're now joined by our beast of the week, Michael Wolff. Michael is a fiercely provocative journalist and best-selling author. He's known for his extraordinarily deep dives into the worlds of power and politics, and his books Fire and Fury, The Siege, Landslide and The Fall didn't just report stories, they triggered firestorms, exposing inner dramas from Trump's White House to the Murdoch empire. Love him or hate him, Michael Wolff captures the essence of power's most polarizing players, and he's always unapologetically bold and unfiltered.
Sometimes I apologize.
I've never heard you apologise. I don't think that's true, apart from maybe one of our feuds was over. Sam, to be a friend of Michael is to have feuds with Michael. We've had a couple of feuds, but we're on speakers right now.
That's wonderful.
Which is good, because I want to know what the hell is going on inside the Trump campaign.
Yes. What's the feeling over there?
Well, I think it literally shifts moment to moment. I mean, it's not that different from the feeling outside of the Trump camp. I mean, I think that they're euphoric and they think that they're going to win at a given moment, and then they plunge into despair and think that they're going to lose. I mean, they are in the same position that everyone else is. They know absolutely nothing, which is really rare for a presidential campaign.
Right.
I mean, people inside presidential campaigns, even if they're wrong, tend to have a very clear view of what's going on. I mean, it's almost their craft.
Right.
We know. Nobody knows. Nobody knows, and he is. I think even more than the people around him in this mercurial moment of a kind of manic high to losing it. I mean, and when Donald Trump loses his shit, it's really serious.
So that, what does that mean? You mean he's yelling at people?
Yelling, screaming,
Throwing.
I don't know if he throws, but it's kind of beyond unpleasant for everyone. I think it's some of the it's, as has been described to me, some of the worst moments of people's lives.
So I am very struck by the absence of Melania and Ivanka on this campaign. Does it make any difference to Donald Trump?
I doubt it. The question is, does it make any difference to the campaign, to his supporters, or to people who may or may not want to vote for him? And it obviously should, because it raises especially Melania raises some big questions. What's going on with this marriage? She has made this campaign has been running for almost 2 years, and she hasn't made one appearance except for the other day at Madison Square Garden. She appeared for, 6 days out from the end of the campaign. She finally appears, speaks very briefly, and then they give this incredibly awkward kiss. People who are married kiss each other on the lips, certainly in a public situation. This was the double cheek bus, stiff-armed. It's horrible. I was there, by the way.
What is the reflection after that rally? How is everybody feeling in that camp after?
Well, I think they felt good about the rally. I mean, that's, the New York Times darkness at noon kind of thing is the New York Times. That's not what it feels like in the rally. In the rally, everybody is having this incredibly good time.
Is it like a Billy Joel concert?
Well, I've never been to a Billy Joel concert.
Well, that's the default for Madison Square Garden.
I'd say it's more like a hockey game. There's a lot of whooping, a lot of cheering, a lot of, being part. But it is a fandom thing. And I often try to make the distinction that Trump is not a political phenomenon. It's a fan phenomenon. The merchandise, there's so much merchandise. It's more like maybe Grateful Dead concert,
Right.
I mean,
he's a franchise. He's a franchise.
And everybody,
it's an entertainment franchise.
It's all very predictable, and these and long. A lot of people got into there at noon. They didn't get out of there until 9:30 at night.
And that's about what, value for money? That this is a day out for people?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, it's not. It's too much value, apparently, because by the end, which is weird, by the time he speaks, there are lots of empty seats because, people are, brought to their knees. And so, but they listen. They sit through this whole succession of morons who get up there and say these moronic things, which are now billed as, dark and racist, and which they all are. But the overriding feeling is that they're just moronic. But these are the same morons that speak at all of these events. So it has a kind of family feel. So, which I think, I think we're a member of this tribe.
Right. It's tribal. It's tribal. Right. Which is how he's changed politics, actually.
Yeah, it's the moron tribe.
I mean, I shouldn't be laughing because it's actually catastrophic for America.
Right.
But it is, you put it very succinctly.
I'm so curious about why they still sit with you. You've written so many. Can you talk about you seem to have the most incredible access, and what did they gain from giving you so much access to their lives and their world?
Top level answer, I have no idea.
Okay.
But if I were to give it, look for some granular explanation here, I think it probably goes to the divided sense of people in the Trump camp. A lot of the people in the Trump camp are perfectly normal political professionals.
So who would that be? Chris LaCivita, Susie Wiles?
Well, I may not say who it is, but there are a lot of them. In another Republican campaign, they would be not noteworthy.
Right.
They would just be doing their jobs. But they've been caught, like the rest of the Republican Party, in this Trump vortex. They have nowhere else to go. There's no other career, and this is their career. They can't just suddenly become, investment bankers. And so here they are, and it's a divided self. They are there, and their job is to make this guy win. But at the same time, they're clear-eyed. It's Donald Trump.
So, meaning what? That they don't want him to win, or they do want him to win because it's their job?
I think that they probably do want him to win because it's their job. They have one job, make the guy win. And I'm particularly talking about the people who are not necessarily ideologues in here. They're political professionals. But at the same time, they're really under no illusion that Donald Trump is a normal figure. Now, there's ways to rationalize this. If he gets elected, well, that's democracy. And there is something inexplicable even to them about Donald Trump. I mean, how does he do it? How does he manage? I mean, doing almost everything that would have ordinarily defeated anyone else, and yet he prevails. So that's a kind of magic.
And this campaign has been so extraordinary. I mean, I remember you telling me that you were covering the Stormy Daniels trial. You were in there every day. That would have felled many a candidate. He came out somehow victorious. You then had the two attempted assassination attempts, which we don't even talk about anymore. Mm-hmm. And now we've got his last rally. But it's just the most extraordinarily energetic and exhausting campaign for all of us.
And I think people feel, especially the people close to them, they feel that they are secondary to or a part of this phenomenon, so that they lack a certain amount of free will here.
Whose counsel does he seek? Does he? Nobody. He's just completely nothing.
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
What about Elon Musk? I want to talk to you about Elon Musk and his role. Mm-hmm. Were Trump to win, what's Elon's role? And also RFK Jr. He was at the rally on Sunday, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he's hustling like mad to be head of
health and human services.
I actually, we'll deal with Elon, but RFK Jr. and Tucker had prominent roles there, and I texted one of the Trump people during this that I just saw that 2028 would be RFK Jr. and Tucker Carlson running for the Republican nomination.
Oh, and a chill just went up my spine.
Yeah. What did the person respond back?
Bingo.
Wow. Oh.
Well, there won't be any of us left by then because no one will have vaccines. We'll have been wiped out by another pandemic.
Do you know what is the secret with Mike Johnson? Do you have insight into that?
You mean the secret? Why? How does someone so talentless seem to prevail here?
Well, he intimated that he and Mike Johnson had a secret.
No,
yes.
I'm sure that there's no secret.
There's no secret. Okay.
Elon Musk.
I can't explain that. In other words, what does he want out of this?
Well, doesn't he want government contracts?
Maybe, but. I think that there's probably an easier and cheaper way to get them. I think I can safely say that this will shortly end in tears.
Go on.
I mean, well, I don't...
Because it ends in tears
for
with
Elon.
everybody.
Well, yeah, and especially these two guys,
Right.
who are both fancy themselves kings of the world. And Elon is not going to bow down to Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is not going to bow down to Elon Musk. And this is a game ultimately of dominance and submission.
With Steve Bannon just being released from prison, do you expect, is that making waves within the campaign? Has he been accepted back into the fold yet?
No. I mean, he hasn't, but he has Trump is not that interested in Steve Bannon. He hasn't been interested in Steve Bannon for a long time. But Steve Bannon has carved himself a place in this MAGA, a place of real MAGA influence. So that matters. He can set things in motion that then ripples or waves that will wash up at Donald Trump's feet, and then he has to react to them. So there was some concern that he was, they're afraid or attentive to this whole fascism dictator line. And so they were afraid that Steve would immediately come out of prison and talk some good old-fashioned fascism stuff.
My goodness.
So I wanted to ask you about Rupert Murdoch's influence on all this. And you make the point in Fire and Fury that Murdoch wanted to be a president maker. But the irony was the president he made was Donald Trump, who he despises. What is he thinking in all this? What is Fox's role at this point, given that Twitter, or X as it's now called, has sort of taken over?
Rupert, especially after January 6th, washed his hands of Trump, thought he was finished, and he wanted no part of him, and was mad about the Dominion lawsuit, which he blamed on Trump, and Rupert determined that he was going to make Ron DeSantis the nominee.
And just to remind people, the Dominion lawsuit, in fact, Fox ended up paying nearly $1 billion after Fox anchors had wrongly slandered the Dominion voting machines.
Right, and blamed the conspiracy. That they adopted the Trump camp's line on the stolen election,
the big lie.
Theoretically, yes. And that was, although you would rightly blame, as the settlement suggests, that it was Fox's fault, Rupert then continued to believe it was Trump's fault. He would never be in this situation were it not for Trump insisting on this, ridiculous case.
So he wanted DeSantis.
So it was there. It was a very clear program. They would support Ron DeSantis, and they would keep Donald Trump off the air, and that clearly didn't work. So Rupert came back. In the end, Rupert is about who's in power. And if he has to suck the bitter pill, he will, and he has.
Who do you think would work for Trump should he achieve a second term? Because he had, talented people went to work for him in the first term, but he had obviously no loyalty, throws everybody under the bus. It's almost impossible to understand, and I think it has to do with the nature of power and the nature of the certain hubris that people who are attracted to power feel. Because you will know this certainty is if you go to work for Donald Trump, it will end badly. Actually, and you may very well be indicted. But I think that there will be probably no shortage of people. I saw John Paulson today kind of groveling to, in his bid to become the Secretary of the Treasury. Obviously, Elon Musk is in there. Why would these people possibly need this? And why would anyone? It is going to end badly for all concerned.
So you have a podcast which you're also dropping today, the same day as ours, which talks about Donald Trump's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein.
Yes.
What can you tell us about it?
Fire and Fury, the podcast, available whatever they say.
Give us a hint. Give us a hint of the story, because I know it's made a lot of news.
This is I I've never been able to understand why the Epstein-Trump relationship why Trump has so easily kind of flicked this away when there is a big body of evidence and a long timeline that they were, good friends, nightlife friends, that they had a relationship whose main subject was women, and women in a way that would be entirely disqualifying to anyone actually doing virtually anything.
Well, young women.
No less running for president. In this, young women, all kinds of women, but it was I can do anything with women at any time. And we did this podcast just because it came out this, former model, Stacey Williams, a Sports Illustrated swimsuit model, came out and described she was one of Epstein's girlfriends, and when he introduced her to Donald Trump immediately started to maul her. And I thought, okay, let's just I know a lot about this relationship. Epstein was a very good source for me when I was writing Fire and Fury. So I thought, okay, let's just put it on the table.
Wow.
Oh boy. I will be listening.
Right, so the minute you finish this podcast, you have to go and download Fire and Fury podcast to find out more about it. There is that very telling photo, which we use all the time in The Beast, of Donald Trump with Melania and Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, no. This was a very, very close relationship. These are two guys, their interests absolutely coincided, and one ended up in the darkest jail in America, and the other brother in arms ended up in the White House.
It's amazing to me that people can gloss that over, that people just look at the photo and it doesn't register. It's like it just doesn't register in their brains at all.
It's extraordinary. Also, I remember you saying to me recently that Donald Trump faces two options. One, he's president. The other, he goes to jail. And he doesn't actually want either of them.
Yeah, I don't... did I say the last? I certainly said the former. I'm not sure.
You did say the latter. But I
think it's true. Clearly, he doesn't want to go to jail, and I think the presidency is equivocal to him. Yes, he wants to be the president because at this point he can't be Donald Trump without being the president. So yeah, but in terms of what a president does, the job, what he can accomplish as president, he's not interested in this.
It has felt the whole time like he's been running the campaign not wanting to be president at all.
Yeah, he has never. One of the things about, when he was in the White House, everybody said that his life in the White House was not really different from his life in Trump Tower. It was the same. He got up late in the morning. He went to work.
Television,
he didn't do much work, and the day was basically filled with delegations of people who would come in and flatter him, and then he would in turn flatter them, and and then he would sit in the Oval Office. I was witness to this scene many times, and it's filled with people, 20 people, 30 people, and he would just be blah, 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 just talk, broadcast. And then when he got to Mar-a-Lago, people would say, well, his life in Mar-a-Lago was not really that much different from his life in the White House. So it is there is a thing about, his interest is in being Donald Trump, not in being the president of the United States.
Right. What's your sense when you speak with J.D. Vance? He's just waiting in the wings going, I'm going to do it. I want this so badly.
Yeah, no, he doesn't. There's another instance. He will be, that will end in tears for him.
Mm-hmm. What about Vladimir Putin and his relationship with Trump? Does it end in tears for Putin? Now all this information of Elon Musk talking to Putin regularly is coming out. We know that Donald Trump sent him COVID tests when Americans couldn't get COVID tests. What does that end in tears too? American tears?
I don't know. Can't even go there. Putin is an incredibly curious player and an astute player, and I'm not sure that we understand how astute he is. I would assume he is vastly more astute than Donald Trump. Yeah. So everyone else it will be their tears and not Trump's tears. But this, with Putin, it could be Trump's tears.
Cognitive decline. I mean, if you play back the clips over the last sort of 12 years, you can see that Donald Trump has definitely changed. Whenever I think it's absolutely obvious he's in cognitive decline, he pops up and does a rally where, regardless of whether or not he's doing his weave or whatever, he seems remarkably coherent. What's your sense, having covered him for as long as you have?
I would not say, I would never say that Donald Trump appears coherent.
But
he does appear energetic. No,
okay.
which is extraordinary. I mean, who can speak for 90 minutes, 120 minutes, basically without taking a breath. So it almost doesn't matter. People forget that this makes no sense whatsoever.
Right.
Just because he's going on. So you're like, oh my God. So I don't know. Cognitive decline. I mean, it's Donald Trump.
It's Donald Trump.
He's just like an old farm tractor that just keeps running.
With less use.
Less use. The blades are all dull, but it's still chugging through the fields.
And there is the other thing. It's not only cognitive decline, and the man is 78 years old. Let's face it. But, he's now been the president, in effect, for 8 years, or treated like the president. So nobody contradicts him. Nobody interrupts. Nobody. It's just broadcast. It's just uninterrupted. There's no filter. There's no need to have a filter. There's no sense that he has to cater to anyone.
When was the last time somebody really said no to him and it took?
That may never have been a circumstance ever in his life.
Everybody needs that.
What's your actual hunch of what's going to happen?
I do not know.
Will you vote on the day, or are you an early bird voter like me?
I don't vote.
You don't vote? No. You've seen too much.
I've seen too much.
He's been traveling, crisscrossing the country for Kamala Harris. Booker, if you don't know, is the charismatic U.S. Senator from New Jersey. He repeatedly makes headlines for his work on criminal justice reform, climate change, economic inequality. His optimism and his passion for bipartisanship makes him a real individual in a very divisive landscape. He's like an actual bridge builder, which feels weird right now. He's always pushing for us to do better and be a more inclusive America. And that is why we need him this week to be our chill beast of the week. We can feel better, I promise.
Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's such a thrill to be on. And I've had the privilege of being embarrassed by Samantha B in public.
Oh, you are such a delight. You scamp.
My chief of staff, who's texting, is here, so she's thrilled. This New Jersey Senator chief of staff. But she goes, I think one of the best things I've ever seen on TV is Samantha B's profile of Ted Cruz. And I'm like, really? I said, hey, show it to me.
That is so funny. Well, you are in it right now, and you are on a multi-state tour. You are jet setting. Please describe what that is like to us. We want to know.
Jumping on plane after plane after plane and running around the country. In many ways, it's a privilege because we have a great nation and people are phenomenal. It is definitely exhausting. I have lost my voice. I think I am a walking petri dish. The excitement and the enthusiasm and the energy at these rallies has been very, very encouraging to my spirit and just hopeful. And I don't think I've ever had an election like this in my life where from Senate seats to House seats to the presidency, you just don't know where this is going to land. It's so up in the air.
Do you think if you'd had more time, if the vice president had had a longer run up to the election, it would have been easier? Or do you think this short span has actually got everybody fired up?
I have no idea. It's just too hard to prognosticate on that. I do know we are where we are, and I do have this chill about what's at stake.
Do you think that we're talking about the gender gap in voting in general enough in this election? Because I just feel like, we're talking about like black male voters, but why are we not talking as much about why so many white men, especially young white men, are planning to vote for Donald Trump if they vote at all? I'm so frustrated by this. I don't know what to do. Tell us what to do. Senator Booker, please. We have problems.
I think we're in a tough moment in America. First of all, men are deeply unhappy. There's a loneliness problem, less friends, less connection, less community. Got to start talking as a nation about how we're going to restore and repair community, how we're going to redeem some of the best cultural values of our nation that remind us that we belong to each other. And so lots of people are writing about this, how these problems are being supercharged by social media that preys upon, designs algorithms for our hating of each other, for our outrage. And I worry about the shearing forces in American society that are pitting us against each other and pulling us apart.
Do you read polls? Do you pickle yourself in polls in the morning? You wake up and go,
it's a polar coaster. You go up.
It's too much.
It's too much anxiety for me to read a daily poll. And then I still remember this article of the New York Times where they said, let us show you how we got it wrong in the previous years. Well, you did get it wrong. And so when you're telling me that your sampling and your modeling has been off, why am I letting myself wake up in the morning and see Kamala only up by 1 point in Michigan, letting that get me upset? This is one of those times where you just do everything you can. As my coach used to say in football, don't look at the scoreboard. Just on this play, do as best you can to advance the ball.
Do you think that we are prepared for the period of time? I mean, whatever happens on Election Day, God willing, it is the outcome we are all aiming for here. Do you think that we are prepared for the time period between Election Day and Inauguration Day? Because I'm reading and reading about those January 6 rioters, who are just in their special prison wing, just running it like the mafia, I'm not sure that we are prepared as a nation for how much more radicalized people are becoming in this period of time. Can you make me feel better about that or no? That's okay.
I can't. I wasn't prepared for January 6th. I would have never imagined that I would be on the Senate floor talking to Mark Kelly saying we should leave the Senate floor last. We're younger senators in a body that the average age is significantly older than me. And we just said, let's take 6, let's take the end just in case people break through those doors and we have to fight them off. And then I remember getting back to my office after being secured when the Senate was running through tunnels, United States Senate running through tunnels to get to a secure location away from the rioters who were screaming bloody murder. 5 police officers died as a result of their injuries that day. I remember seeing wounded police officers on our escape. And then I turned on the TV and the first image I saw just feet from where I sit in the Senate chamber was a Confederate flag. This man is now more capable, more prepared to not accept the results of this election and to take action, and has more acolytes in more positions of power in the House and the Senate who can't even now, like J.D. Vance can't, say that the last election was or the outcome was right, and I support the results. Those folks who somehow are luxuriating in this idea that our democracy is secure do not know how fragile democracies are around the globe and how many democracies, from Turkey to Hungary to a president who loves Viktor Orban, are slipping towards authoritarianism, attacks on the free press, attacks on democratic norms and traditions. So this guy is not hiding the ball. He is telling us openly.
Why do you think there hasn't been more resistance within the Republican Party? Because we know that so many Republican politicians don't like Donald Trump. Why has he been able to so successfully scare them?
Well, I mean, I have seen courageous Republican leader after courageous Republican leader, from Jeff Flake, right-wing guy, to Cheney, right-wing woman, stand up and say the right thing. These are people who I don't have that much common ground. Jeff was a dear friend, but they stood up and said the right thing, and there was a consequence. They are not in office right now. And that is, I think, the chilling effect, that dissenters can't stay elected. And I think the worst mistake, I always tell young people, never, ever confuse position with purpose. Life is much more about having a clear purpose than being consumed with a position. Because as soon as you reverse that, then you'll do everything possible to stay in a job and lose your soul, lose your clarity, lose your moral compass.
Do you think it will help if I personally phone bank more?
Yes. It actually will. In 2016, in Wisconsin, one vote per voting machine different, a few votes per precinct different, would have changed the outcome of that election. From Maine to Montana, these are elections that have been turned on less than 1,000 votes in each one. What you do in these final days matter, and what will be your best measure of your devotion to this country? Will it be sedentary agitation where you're so upset about what's going on, but you'd fail to get up?
So, Senator Booker, I have one question for you, which is just that you ran for president. I'm very curious as to how you reached the decision that you are ready for that and that you can be the biggest boss in the whole of America.
Yeah, so I think it's what hubris to look in the mirror and think that you can do the most impossible job in the world. When I ran for mayor to lead a city in crisis, I realized that I alone could not do that job, but I had an incredible team of people around me that helped to turn the fortunes of a city. But now this is a country. And so I think that I had hard conversations with myself, some that you might not expect, like could I order an attack in which civilians would die? That was a hard thing for me to look in the mirror and have to think through. But ultimately, I decided to run because I felt that in the Democratic field that there was nobody that could carry the urgency I felt, which was around this awful breaking apart of our nation in a tribalistic way. That I didn't want to run an election simply about paid family leave. I ran for a real purpose that I felt like we needed a shift in our politics from hating one another to elevating the higher virtues that understand that we need one another.
And to what extent do you think that division is driven by bad actors, by the Chinese on TikTok, using TikTok, by the Russians using all sorts of kind of social media against Americans? Because we know it's in their interest to sow disrest and confusion here.
Yeah, well, I just want to start off with words from Abraham Joshua Heschel, who I think said it so best. And he said, in a free society, some are to blame, but all are responsible. And so I just, like, anybody who complains about the divisions in our country, who is not doing something about it, you are part of the problem. You may not be to blame for the problem. And I'll give you an example. So I'm in a red state campaigning, and I'm getting on a plane, and people are saying, hello, Senator, not Senator, hello, they like being nice to me, joking with me. And I sit down in my seat next to a mom and a daughter, 80 and 60. The 80-year-old who was sitting next to me says, who are you? Are you a professional athlete? And as a big black guy, part of me wants to be insulted by that assumption. Part of me is like, my ego kicks in, is like, well, I could be. I mean, come on. But I look at her and I go, no, ma'am, I'm not a professional athlete. And she goes, well, who are you? And I go, ma'am, I'm Cory Booker. I'm a United States Senator. And the first thing she wants to know, which most Americans want to know when they meet random congressperson about, is whose team are you on? My team or their team? Which tribe are you in? So she looks at me and she goes, are you a Democrat or Republican? I look at her, I take a deep breath because I know where this is going. I go, ma'am, I'm a Democrat. And she literally crosses her arms, looks angry, turns her back to me and looks over her head and she goes, I should have brought my Trump hat. Now, I know this tune. And so I look at this woman, I go, ma'am, Donald Trump, he signed two of the biggest bills I wrote into law, one that liberated tens of thousands of people from prison, and the other that got billions of dollars invested in the lowest income rural and urban spaces. And now she looks at me, she turns back around, she looks downright confused. By the time the plane lands, we're laughing, talking about our families, our traditions, all the things that connected us. Why do we live in a country where we cannot change the tune and realize that when you poll the major issues in America, from guns to abortion, we all agree on so much that could advance the cause of our country, but we allow our politics to tear us apart. And yeah, I go sit in classified briefings and hear what the Russians and the Chinese and the North Koreans are doing to exploit our hatred, to go on these platforms, pretend they're us, and whip up as much misinformation and hate as we can. Brene Brown is right. It's hard to hate up close, so pull people in.
You have so much work to do on your planes. You have to talk to every individual person that you run into in the next little while. This was amazing. Thank you so much. Oh, This was great.
Yeah, I'm worried that we're altering the outcome of the election by keeping you any longer. I think you need to get back on another plane. Thank you so much for joining us.
I always say, if America hasn't broken your heart, you don't love her enough. There's a lot of heartbreaking stuff out here.
I do not know all things, but I do know that was a very pleasurable conversation. I always feel very spiritually uplifted after talking to Senator Booker.
His description of being on the floor with Mark Kelly, it's very profound. And I do think people don't understand how easy it is to lose a democracy and how impossible it is to get it back.
Phone banking is the key, I heard.
I once phone banked for Val Demings in Florida.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, but people didn't understand what I was saying. This was a long time ago, and I really wasn't very good at it. I think I asked the wrong questions. I was like, could you tell me which way you're going to vote? And they were like, hell no, and put the phone down.
I know Val Demings. This feels so random to me, and I love it. Oh, I wish that I'd been on those calls just listening.
I think I show up better in other ways.
Showing up in other ways.
Oh, showing up in other ways.
The Joanna Coles and Sam B story.
Well, you should go and phone bank.
Oh, yeah, always. The dulcet tones of my voice, people love it. They're like, tell me what to do. I'll just do it. I hear that voice and I'm just compelled.
Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed this podcast, which we hope you did, please like, subscribe, and share this episode with a friend.
And you know what, for that matter, share it with an enemy as well.
So tag us on all of your social platforms, and you've been asking us for an email address. So we've finally got one where you can write your comments.
Oh.
beastpod@thedailybeast.com.
Okay, I'm only going to read the nice ones.
I'm only going to send you the nice ones.
Okay, thank you.
So you can give us all your feedback, tell us who you'd like as a guest, but it's beastpod@thedailybeast.com. We'll be back next Thursday with another episode of The Daily Beast podcast.
Never forget, as my muse once said, be best.
Be beast.
Always.